Meeting in order. To start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody. Apologies for my voice. So normally we start off a little bit of housekeeping. Just for anybody that's out there listening, when we do get to questions and comments, they are to be related to specific items that are on the board's agenda. Usually that means being the superintendent and you've your issue on the agenda. So I just want to make sure we also limit those comments and concerns to 3 minutes at a clip. Just so we can, keep the meeting moving. With that said, let's start with, really our biggest concern and issue, which is the capital project update. Especially after last week, we really need to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, so I'm actually happy to start. We met with the capital project team last week. We had some conversations regarding the overall scope of the project. We had conversations regarding potentially trimming some scope that, though necessary and needs to be done at some point. We need to prioritize our roofing system and also the HVAC system. So we had some conversations around that. However, shortly after that, towards the end of the week last week, conditions changed pretty significantly. So we've had 2 separate rain systems. The one last week being obviously much more severe. But even as early as today, we're finding new leaks within the middle school building. The one thing that I would say, and then I'm going to turn it over to some of our professionals who have done some work around our conversations. I think that with the governor's issuance of the heat index bill, which requires maximum temperatures to be maintained in buildings, I think that we have to have a very candid discussion about any decision to trim any scope that would impact our ability to keep buildings at the reasonable temperatures. Because just making a short list of things that would be impacted, it could be anything like the summer exams. We do have central air in the high school. However, last year we were experiencing difficulties with that system, and we all know how graduation went last year, right? So with the maximum temperature bill, we would not even have been able to occupy that space. So things like graduation from daily, something as large as graduation and something as, daily as just a regular school day would be negatively impacted. So I just think that as we have these conversations, where we were last week is actually different than where we are just 1 week later. So I think we need to be realistic about that. At the end of the capital project meeting, we had asked Jason to go back and give us some updated calculations with the scope trimmed down to just the middle school and Elm Drive, removing the lifts from floors 2 and 3 because they are currently functioning, and though they are not functioning well, and they are not functioning ideally, we were trying to be as responsible as possible and removing anything that didn't need to be done right now. So Jason does have those numbers for us. And then we've also spoken to our partners at Trane to talk about what parts of the EPC could be accomplished without any other capital work being done. So we have sort of parallel conversations, and then we need to make a decision as to the direction we're going forward with, because if you recall, we'll have to have a finalized idea by the first February meeting, and we will have to have a completely finalized, budget by the, April 5th deadline. So that's sort of our timeline for making all of these difficult decisions. So unless you want to say anything, I'll turn it over to Jason from Bernie Duncan's office.
From the governor's office, that takes effect, what, September?
September
of 25.
Okay.
Was there guidance on the rollout yet, though? I was under the impression there was gonna be some.
It's exactly what it was initially to be, that, any space, I don't think it says classroom specifically. But any space that reaches 82 degrees with no regard for for real feel or anything like that, so 82 degrees. We need to initiate a protocol with no explicit directions as to what a protocol is. And then if it reaches 88 degrees, it can no longer be occupied and we need to evacuate that space. So the one thing that we've talked about, and again, this isn't my area of expertise, but just being reminded that in 3 out of our 4 school buildings where they have unit ventilators, we have to recycle air throughout the building, using outdoor air. So, it's not dehumidified, it's just the air coming in from outside. And so if it's in the high 80s outside, it's not long before it's in the high 80s inside, right? So we just have to be considerate of this mandate that's coming down, and though it's only a couple of weeks throughout the year, that we actually face temperatures that high in New York. We do also have to get in 180 school days and 990 minutes of instruction at, the elementary and middle high level. So, just keeping all of that in mind. If there's any other questions, I'll just turn it over to Jason.
So we handed out a hard copy of the report, and I think Ellen's got it up on the screen now, so we're just gonna pull it up. So as Carolyn said, we, after the meeting with the project team, we've updated, our report you've seen before for, so the previous referendums, to reflect kind of a new, look at a potential scope to consider. So, Carolyn's already gone through kind of the importance from a facilities standpoint of kind of the timing and the urgency of this work. And then, at the front of the report, we can just kind of go through from a financial perspective, again, what some of the timing needs are, and then get into the actual financials, themselves. So, on page 2 of the report, again, this is just the, existing summary of your building debt service and aid, and then that local share, which becomes your capital exclusion for the tax cap. So just as a reminder for everybody, we have some older authorizations that are where our debt service is rolling off the books in the 27-28 fiscal year. So that's really been the goal of this capital project planning all along, is to make sure that we have something in place where we can do a capital project at the timing where that drop off in debt service occurs, so we can kind of, maintain consistent budgets and tax cap, and also mitigate the tax increase of any new project by having it replace some of that retiring debt. You can see highlighted in green there off to the side where that drop off is occurring. That's about $750,000 of local share. We can then offset against the new project if we have something ready to go by that time frame. And the next page is just the bar chart that kind of helps visualize that for you. Those bars and that black line is kind of where we currently are in our current budget, and all that room beneath the black line is where we can partially offset a potential new referendum by having that fill in and kind of maintain the current levels. And then if we go beyond that, then that's where we start quantifying any new taxes needed for that. The next page is just a generalized timeline that kind of backs into why we're looking at these vote dates that we're talking about. So again, if we kind of assume that typically the impact of our project comes on as it's wrapping up and we're issuing bonds and closing out projects and getting the aid flow. If we start from the right-hand side of the page, you can see we have that timing lined up so that that bond would hit, that blue box would hit over that 27-28 fiscal year where that debt's retiring. So backing up before that, if we assume 2 years, 2 summers of construction through that borrowing season, the pink and blue boxes, and then kind of backing up on the left-hand side of the page there, about a year for design and SED approval. Then you can see that May of 25, if we're targeting a vote with the May budget vote, can still work. Beyond that, there's still some possibility to fit that in, but it starts to get a lot tighter that we might have to make earlier payments than we would otherwise be required to with debt service to still fill that in. And really the absolute drop dead date to have something before that debt expires would be December 26th. Anything beyond that, you're not going to have a positive referendum in time to be able to then put it in your 27-28 budget. So, that's about the latest you can go. And really, this time frame right now, this past November, the vote last month, or this coming May is really kind of that ideal timing where it works with the standard, timeline of a project. Okay, so now that we kind of set the stage with that, just going to the next page, page 5 of the report. These are the summarized assumptions. A lot of these have not changed since the last version you've seen, but just to go through a couple of them again real quick. That first assumption, the building aid ratio. So again, for any voter approved capital project, anything we spend on eligible dollars, we get 23% back from the state. So they'll pay about a quarter of the expenses back to us for eligible dollars. The next box down there, the bond percentage, that's what percentage of the project we're assuming is going to be aidable based on scope. So that can both be a result of the types of items you're doing and then also the maximum cost allowances, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we're assuming that 82.7% of the project would be eligible to receive that building aid back. There's a few dates there that kind of align just with that timeline we did. And then really kind of the other two key things on the summarized assumptions, bullet number 10, the borrowing rates. We're assuming notes at 5%, bonds at 6%. That's conservative in today's market. Today, you'd be looking at probably more like mid to high 3s for probably both of those. There's not much of a difference between a 1-year note and a 15-year bond right now. But we build that in, we're not talking about bonding again for 2-3 years from now. So build in some conservatism. And then the last bullet here, the capital reserve and cash the district has available to contribute to the project is $12 million. Same as for the last referendum. So then if we go to the next page, just total revenues and expenditures. So again, the updated scope for this revised report, the total scope would be 36,605,815. And under that revenue box, you can see again, we're putting in 12 million of reserves in cash and then bonding the remaining 24.6 million. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay, so if we flip to the next page, page 7, this takes the detailed scope document, and that is provided as a appendix to the report if you need to look through that at all. But basically takes that detailed scope document, we break it down between the 2 buildings that are in this updated report, so that'd be the middle school and Elm Drive. We do this just so that we can then analyze it for aid purposes against our maximum cost allowances. So just taking that scope sheet that the architect and CM provide and putting it into more of our financial perspective format. So then all that information then goes to the next page, page 8 of the report. So this again is your maximum cost allowances. So at each building that you have, the state sets a maximum amount of work you can do over a 5-year period and still get aid on it. So you can do as much work as you want, but if you go beyond those maximum limits within a 5-year period, then the state just doesn't aid you on those additional dollars you spend. So in the assumptions, when we talked about that bond percentage, this is kind of what's driving that down from 100 to that 82.7. As you can see, there are a few spots where we have some red numbers. So that's just based on the size of the project versus your allowable aid ceilings. This is all factored into the projections, so it's not necessarily a huge deal. And really, you can't do anything about it other than if you were going to defer work out, past 5 years. So there is about 4.7 million of the 36 that's over aid ceilings, but that's all accounted for within the projections. Okay, so that'll be page 9, the actual maturity schedule. So this is all updated now. So again, you see on the top left-hand corner, shading green is the 12 million cash we're putting in. The 24.6 million we're bonding in column C is over roughly 15 years, and that's to align with how the state pays the building aid back. So we can try to keep things relatively smooth. And when you look at that right-hand column, you can see the local share on average is about 1.8 million. It kind of drops off a little bit as we go, but so that's higher than that $750,000 drop that we talked about in the existing summary. So on the next page, we take that original local share we looked at in the first page of the report, drop in the maturity schedule and come up with that combined total in the green all the way to the right. So that's essentially what we're looking at, that if this project were to pass, what their updated local share would be. So we'd be going up from about 1.4 million per year of need in the annual budget for the capital share of your expenses to about 2.7 million. So if we go to the next page, again, going back to that bar chart, we see we filled in that drop off below the black line with this project, and then we go above that as well. So those pieces of the bars that go above that line, that equates to about 44 cents per $1,000 of full value and additional taxes needed to pay for those expenses. And I know like that doesn't necessarily mean anything to the average homeowner. So then we take that information and on the next 2 pages, we put in the tax rates, and then ultimately kind of what's the most useful thing for people, I think, is the house page. So we have that on page 13 of the report, a whole range of houses anywhere from 100,000 to 800,000 of full value and different exemption levels, enhanced star, basic star, no star. So you can see on any of those different levels what that means in terms of tax impact for the average homeowner for those 8 years at the start of the project where we're above that line. So focusing on, one of the middle ones there, the $400,000 or $500,000 house, you can see, for the average homeowner with star at a $400,000 house, it's about $163 for this project. And just for reference, I do have a report in the last one, the original prop one in the last project. That impact was for a $400,000 house with basic star was $165. So it's similar, but a little bit improved from that. So that would be the impact of that scope. Beyond that, in the appendix pages are just a few things for how we came to the assessed values that we use for calculating the tax rates, and then also just that actual backup scope document for that. If you want to see the detail of what's included in this proposed scope for this updated report. Any questions on all of that, on the updates?
Well, this is a question for the bigger group, really. What was our magic number? What were we trying to get to? Because I still haven't heard anything from the public other than no. And, I haven't heard, well, it'd be fine if you did 10 million, it'd be fine, we'd be fine if you did 50 million. So did we have a magic number that we picked and said, get this to 163 and we think it'll be okay? Or did we just basically try, excuse me, try to take out Alden? Because that's my second question. I'll let you guys figure out how to answer it. Is the taking Alden out, I thought, part of our risk exposure, whatever, is the roofing system, which is, I think, pretty close to middle school. The fact that we have that building is stuck there from outside and humidity from outside, and we could be sending kids home for days or weeks.
Right, so I think that a lot has changed since last week, so I think we need to be clear about that. If you recall, the May vote that buildings of priority were the middle school, being that it is in the worst condition of disrepair. And also it's our largest square footage building where we can't really function with contingency plans without having this space. Elm Drive, it's our smallest building. It's used the least throughout the day, but it's burning the most energy. And I think that was one of the reasons that we had prioritized that, because we felt as though creating a more efficiently running elementary school down there would yield a lot of savings long-term in energy costs. So that's where those two buildings were prioritized. I think I've said it multiple times. It's not to say that any of this, right, can be really put on the back burner. And I think that's the risk that we run with not including something this time around. I think that's number one. And 1 week later, I would say, now that we have this maximum temperature bill, in addition, we're even in a worse circumstance. So yes, we do have problems with the roof at Alden. It is still under warranty for the time being, though it's not gonna be under warranty forever. That is a significant difference between the roofing system and the middle school in Alden. We also need a new boiler. We also need to heating system, down at Walden. So, you know, I agree with you when you're asking the question, and I think that we need to have this conversation in light of everything that's gone on the last week.
Yeah, to Caroline's point, we didn't say anything wasn't a priority. If we didn't get it done this time, we'd have to get it done pretty much ASAP.
Right.
Which doesn't make sense because it's just gonna cost us more to have another capital. I mean, if you're gonna do a project together, but I mean, either you're gonna close the school because a roof could collapse, or you're gonna close the school because we have no heat, or the temperatures are too high.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really unfortunately what we have to convey to the public as far as just really how important it is for what we're asking.
For the other piece, I think we're gonna need to, I don't know what to do about it, but if you look at the number of votes that came out, good or positive or negative, I'm not, going to either side. It's like, feels like 10% of the people that can vote actually came out and voted.
Mhm.
I mean, it was
It's not even 10% of the voters.
yeah, I mean, we used to get in the thousands, now we're lucky if we get 500 votes. Total, both sides. I mean, I think we need to somehow, and I don't know if it's robocall in every house in the district and the whatever. To come out and vote either way, but, I mean, I feel like we're chasing something here and I'm not even sure what we're trying to chase. If the public is gonna say no, or the 280 people, whatever it was, that voted no, if they're gonna vote no, if I ask for a nickel, then we're wasting our time. I don't know how to not waste, I mean, when this building is falling in, I don't know what else to do, but I just think we need to put some serious effort. I don't know if we need outside help. I don't even know if, the county's sure annoyed the crap out of me during election time. Every 15 minutes, my phone is going off telling me to go vote. Well, maybe we have to be annoying politicians as well, because it's like I said, I don't know what we're chasing. I know what we're trying to do is make it as absolutely minimal as possible. But we also, I hope the public understands that this is, if we do it this way, it's the first ask. And we're gonna be back very soon to ask again and probably again to, and it would be cheaper and again, it gets spread out over time no matter what we do. We can't borrow however many $1 million, $70 million and like spend it tomorrow. We're gonna take this money, get this money over time. So I'm not sure what splitting it into 2 or 3 packages is gonna do for us, but
I think it's important to say we understand that some people can't afford and they don't want taxes to go up. We totally understand that. I mean, that's why for years and years and years, we've tried to maintain, we've tried to patch, we've tried to fix, we've tried to do everything, but there comes a time where you can't do that anymore. So either, we don't do it and it's gonna be a lot worse for families in the districts. Or we do it and the taxes slightly go up. We've tried to minimize it as much as we can to make that impact low.
Yeah.
That might be part of the misconception too, is by how much.
Mhm.
So like, I feel like there's 3 big things, like, what are we gonna put in the vote? When are we gonna have the vote? And what are we gonna do to try to get more people to vote?
Right, yeah, and I think for the purpose of this time that we have our vendors here available, with us for the next 30 minutes, we really have to focus on what are we going to include in the vote, because the other stuff can come after, but while we have our professionals here, help with the financing, and also I know Matt has been working, pretty diligently on looking at every combination of EPC work that we could possibly do, and I also know we have BBS, remotely. Yeah, Joe's on remotely, so, and Lauren's here as well from Train, so any of the questions that we have, we really need to get answered now while we have them, and we do have a full facilities report about the current conditions of our buildings, which I'm sure you have seen some of it walking in. But we also have videos from when rainfall, and other updates as well.
Sorry, go on.
This would mean one pump.
I think
Is that
we need to
correct?
decide that. That
Oh,
was the
okay.
conversation that we had landed on last week.
Okay.
And so unfortunately, we're in a different circumstance now, both with the maximum temperature bill coming to fruition, which we were not necessarily expecting. We had heard that there was backtracking on that, and that's not what happened on Friday rather. And so that, and also the current conditions of this building specifically, but 3 of our buildings worsening with every rainstorm.
Put you on the spot and see if you remember. So with this proposal, it's 30, give or take 37 million. And they have the costs for the taxes. Do we have that handy in any way, shape or form, what we put out to vote? I just want to see a comparison, because even if we cut out Alden and cut out the ADA,
Yeah, we have it. It was about 59 million
For all 3.
for all three.
Right. and I mean, it's hard to give the whole thing, but I kind of wanted to see just for your average, say, $400,000 house with no star, what that was per year. I don't know if you have
The
that.
total for all three properties.
Jason, if you look, is this the right
He
version?
has it in his game.
Yeah.
Just like a
for
no
all
star,
three,
400,000, what
The
the
summary
cost.
page we had was for the $500,000 home.
Okay,
If
that's
you want
fine.
400, I can look it up, but the $500,000 star house for all three props was 382.
No star,
Sorry, that was for star. No star was 406.
basic star?
Yeah, basic star was 382.
Okay, so it was an extra $180. Right now it's 207. It would be 382 if it was everything. So it's $180 for the year, and that would include everything without excluding all of it or the ADA.
And that was November.
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically $10 a month.
You're,
I just wanted to jump in. I realized because it wasn't making sense to me why it was that close. I would have thought it went down further. So just to clarify, the numbers in here are correct, but I noticed that when we updated this, it looks like we shortened the window because some of those outer years dropped back down to the bar. The numbers in here are only quantifying the first 8 years versus in the prior report, it was for the entire 15-year bond.
Okay.
So if we wanted a true apples to apples comparison, I just dropped that in. We're assuming over the full 15-year of the bond again. Let's make sure. This one here. Then for this proposition that you're talking about, the report you have in your hand, we can update this and resend it. That $500,000 basic star house will only be a $55 increase, not the 207 that was in here, because I was only quantifying those high years, not the entire 15-year of the bond. So if you're trying to compare it to what was presented in November, which would make sense because we're taking 5 million out of the vote. The bond percentage went up because a lot of that money we're taking out was over aid ceilings. it
So
makes sense.
36 million is 55, but then when you add 20 to it, it goes up $230.
Because part of with the 36 million, we're getting the benefit of the 12 million of cash and capital reserves. We're getting the benefit of the $750,000 drop off from the existing debt. And our bond percentage is higher because we're not doing as much work that's going over aid ceilings. So then as we add on to that, every incremental dollar above that, we're not adding more cash, we're not getting more retiring debt, and our aid ability is going down. Because that summary for all three props, when we did that was about 80% bond percentage instead of 80, we were almost 83 in this, so that's a difference there.
in your flow chart, it talks about, I think it says 6 months for SED approval. Is that possible?
Depends. We have the year in there, so I mean, part of that can be give and take too, on like, does the design take a little longer, not as long, does the approval take longer? I'd say SED approval is probably close to that, maybe a little longer than what we've seen, and you could chime in if there's some difference, but there is the third party review finally came back. So that would be an avenue to try to get things approved sooner if needed.
Okay, yeah, I thought I had heard that SED was struggling right now.
It was definitely falling behind, and then they recently, probably about a month or two ago, reinstituted the third party review, so you had the option to essentially pay to play to try to get your thing, your projects reviewed back.
The third party review, they're boasting really quick turnarounds. So, I can't remember what it would be for this size project, but for a project that's under $5 million, they're saying they'd approve it in 10 days. It's unheard of, but, so they've got aggressive, schedules for third party review.
So I think we also have to be realistic too, with the maximum temperature bill. There might be a lot of other people who wouldn't originally have been looking at converting some of their buildings to climate controlled spaces. That might be, so we're gonna also be competing with some of their timelines too. I think the backlog's gonna grow with all of that. And also with some of the electric conversions for the zero emissions buses that some schools are gonna have to do. So I think whatever it is, it's great that the third party review is back, and maybe that will soften the blow a little bit, but I think we're gonna be kind of up against it no matter what.
Well, for that maximum temperature thing, I mean, I don't think we should wait till September to, we should start practicing in April. That way, by the time it hits where we're legally required to do it, we're well rehearsed.
But what would we be rehearsing? Because we have a finite number of spaces that are climate
Send them
controlled.
home,
Well, but
right? So,
also
I mean, if it's 88 degrees in a classroom, but we don't have another classroom to put them in, it's back to remote learning. And then I don't think anybody wants to see that, but I mean, what other choices do we have? People think that this is I think there's people that still believe that we're trying to make, air condition the buildings so everybody will be, dancing through the hallways. We can't live without this stuff. You vote it down, okay, but now what?
I would like to make sure that all of our sensors, I don't know if I'm using the right word, thermostats, that we're testing all of those to make sure they're,
So they'll just.
are they
jump
up
in.
to date? Do they
Yeah, I
need-
was gonna say that the antiquated systems that you have, that's part of the HVAC upgrades is you guys have very antiquated control systems on your HVAC. Unfortunately. So sorry, Ellie, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's one thing we've been talking about too.
No, I
So-
was just gonna say exactly that.
Yeah.
Part of our package is to upgrade our controls. So Elm Drive Elementary, for example, where Caroline was speaking about all the heat loss. That's using pneumatic, like blowing air in tubes with compressors to tell temperatures. And the regulations speak to center of the room, 3 feet off the ground, shaded areas. So the wall mounted stats may not even be, they may be an indicator, but not the sole indicator. We'll have to go in and that'll be a trigger point for us to go in and look. But right now, we can't monitor Elm remotely. Alden's controls are end of life and end of support. The high school's controls are end of life, end of support. Train's been putting Band-Aids on all of that for us just to get it operable. And this building's controls are on the same obsolescence track as Alden. So it would literally be a labor intensive endeavor to go in and every period, every hour, check temperatures manually and report back and activate plans accordingly. We don't have reliable controls to do it any other way.
Step one, I think the public really wants to know, how did we get in this mess? And duct taping it over the years is not really the answer to getting to, for the public that I've spoken to. We're in this mess for several reasons. And which is one of the reasons that many of us got on the board to begin with. that the boards of years past, for whatever reason, did not want to up the ante, I guess, in the tax base by replacing, so they did the best maintenance they could. We're in this mess due to a lot of deferred maintenance by years past and by boards that none of us were on. These are public buildings. The public owns them. If your house has roof leaks and you have buckets of water under it, I would think you'd want to fix it, no matter what the cost. Unfortunately, for the public, a lot of people, I mean, unfortunate, but a lot of people are on fixed incomes. I'm on a fixed income myself. But these, again, public buildings, we need to educate the children, and for the minimal amount of money that this will cost each taxpayer, it has to be done. There really is no other option. If we have catastrophic failure, then the school buildings will be closed and the children will be home. I think that's really the bottom line. The public has to understand how we got here and what happens if we don't fix it.
On top of that, Howard, I mean, and I think it's up to us to explain to them that we can't just take the $10 million that we have tomorrow and replace the roof. It doesn't work that way.
No.
So, and a lot of people don't understand that. We have been putting aside the money, we have been saving money. But go ahead.
No, I was gonna speak to exactly that point, Chris, because I know that question did come up, and we spoke to representatives at State Ed today, multiple facilities planning office and the state aid office, and I wanted to share those numbers with the board just to be crystal clear. We have $10.5 million in reserves and $1.5 million in cash to add to that. That brings us to the 12 that Jason spoke about. However, in a district with an annual budget of roughly $35 million, our 4% unrestricted fund balance hovers around 1.3 million. In an emergency situation, the board has the authority to declare an emergency with the state through legal measures, but the district can only expend the available funds in the unassigned fund balance, which means our roof here, just the middle school scope of work for the roof here in very general numbers is just under, projected to be just under about $5 million. We can put 1.3 towards it and we will have $0 available for any bad thing that might happen, any unforeseen circumstance. It blows out our savings. We cannot touch the capital reserve, even in an emergency.
So if there was a catastrophic event, we would basically have to close the school. Until.
Yes, in a catastrophic event, we would
When?
have an insurance claim, we would take the little bit of cash we have, but we have, the cash on hand would only cover roughly 25% of the projected costs with no immediacy.
Right.
And so I would say, to Howard's point, no one's sitting at this table, was sitting at this table, at a time that it would have been more convenient or more, timely to make those decisions, but we're here now, and if nothing changes, and we're going to be in the same situation. However, the conditions of our buildings are worsening, and now they're at the point where they're worsening rapidly. The amount of moisture and saturation in the roof deck of this building, as you walk down the hallway, you can look up and see it. It's significantly damaged. We've talked about the fact that we, and Joe, we've reached out to, Joe Reddick from BVS to talk about a structural engineer coming in and looking at the integrity of the roof at this point, because there is so much moisture. We're in a situation right now where, our risk, and safety coordinator from, the county, BOCES, has come in, and though we are waiting for, asbestos testing for the middle school auditorium, we're also in a situation where he does not recommend opening that space until a structural engineer looks at that because of the potential, damage to the roof deck there and the ceiling. So, the building is going to decide for us, regardless of what we decide, right? We're in a situation where we've already had to delay school once. We had new leaks overnight. It was once again literally raining inside the middle school. We're now dealing with significant leaks on all 3 levels of the building. There was a time not very long ago when we were talking about wings of the building that we could preserve while we, potentially patch, potentially go piecemeal. We're not in that situation anymore, and it hasn't been that long since we've had that conversation that things have changed and changed significantly. We're looking at another full day of rain tomorrow. At this point, and we've had this conversation, I don't know how we're making it through this winter in this building, just realistically speaking. So, I can't stress enough that specifically this building absolutely needs to be done, but Alden Place is having roof issues. They have the HVAC issue. Elm Drive has significant HVAC issues. Elm Drive had water that you could hear in the cinder block walls. That's coming from somewhere, and interior cinder block walls, which means it's coming from the roof. It's not coming down the flashing. It's not coming on the outside of the building. So, we focus a lot on this building because it's in the worst state, but none of our buildings are in a state that we can just leave things alone. And the high school, which is our, building that's in the best condition, it is our newest building. If we do not make the proactive changes that need to be made as that heating system is reaching end of useful life as well, we're going to be in the same situation in our fourth and most recently built building.
I think it's important to say too, that in the recent years, we've put together since, Elliot's taken the position, John's taken the position, we have maintenance, on pretty much everything, on a regular basis.
Yes.
Whereas, in the past, did that happen on a regular basis? Probably not. And look, the previous boards were trying to be frugal, they were trying to be responsible with taxpayer money. But at the end of the day, that's kind of by doing nothing, it leaves us in this position today.
Correct.
And, you have our promise going forward that once the work is done, we're gonna do scheduled maintenance pretty much on a regular basis. So, and hopefully that'll lengthen the life of it.
I wanted to add to Howard's and Chris, your original point that about, the conditions of the building, that's based on fact, it's documented. We've had several presenters come in and state the conditions. I don't think that is a debatable topic at this time. But the consequence of keeping the children home who really suffer, and putting population of parents who obviously cannot have their children stay back at home as it was during COVID and who've experienced that. There's the larger stakeholders out there who have voted this down, who don't have that interest, right? They're not going to be sitting at home with these children because they don't have children in this district. So what is it for them to have this goal of fixing these buildings, whereas they have the privilege of everyone in this room has heat and air conditioning in their car, in their home, in their place of business, if it's not in this district, if it's in an office and they're not working outdoors. So they are the larger community who doesn't have a stake exactly within the building because they don't have students or are employed in the district. What is their motivation? And I, Chris, to your point, I find it extremely difficult to follow that. We know the average home in this district is well above $400,000 in value. I mean, I would love for anyone to show me a home less than that value. So I find it extremely difficult to believe that even if it's the non-primary residence at a home valuation of $500,000 at $220 annually, that it would be difficult to meet that. We've told millennials to save up to buy a home. Don't buy that extra cup of coffee at Starbucks, make it at home. Don't buy your avocado toast, make it at home. Maybe we need to provide tips like that to save community members money to be able to afford $220 annually for a home that is valued at $500,000, which is the majority of the homes, if not significantly more in this district.
And a lot of families are struggling now in the last few years, and it's, I get that. At the end of the day, I mean, our 2-hour delay made the local newspaper. Now, think about people that are looking to move to Millbrook and they open the newspaper and read that. This will eventually affect market values, and that's not a threat. People read that, people hear things, and, that's why you need good school systems in a town to keep values up, so.
So Jason.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry. I kind of like her idea with the marketing strategy, and I know that's not what this conversation is about, but if you relate it to something like annually, like Amazon Prime membership or something like that, that's really relatable, that $220, you guys spend that on X every year and make it more relatable, I feel like it might be more tangible for some of the people that are voting it no. I kind of like that marketing strategy, but that's not what we're here for. I just wanted to say that. It's a good idea.
Can you, the part about the unaidable, expenses? Can you back up to that number, like where that came from? I mean, $2.5 million, it's not aidable just for the middle school. That's a lot of money that the state is not helping us with.
Yeah, there you go. So that on the page 8 of the reporter on the screen behind me, so basically, the state for any of your buildings determines what's called a maximum cost allowance or an aid ceiling. It's based on a number of factors. There's, inputs for kind of like the occupied space, like the number of classrooms, plus regional cost factors and construction cost indexes. But without getting too into the details of how it's calculated, basically the numbers in yellow on that page represent the maximum amount of work you can do over a 5-year period in a building. So taking the middle school, for instance, as you're just saying that number, the most you can do there is at 19.3 million.
But who made up that number? I mean, is that the state?
The state,
did it
yeah.
and figured it out?
Yep.
And is there any way for us to look at that number and say, well, no, we have this much occupied space, we have this much educated, whatever the parameters are.
You can always do it's called like an instructional space review to check the space. In my experience, most of the aid ceilings are higher than they would be if they were revisited today, because you've probably taken over classroom space for other things that don't generate building aid units, like extra services or offices, things like that. So if, what we typically see with most of our clients is if you had to reevaluate today compared to what's been carried forward from older projects, you would probably go down, not up. But I mean, that's something that can be looked at if we felt that was.
It also goes back to the whole idea that one of the biggest challenges we face with this project is keeping debt on the books, right? Because if we can create a cycle of projects where we're doing smaller maintenance projects, we're never gonna have to go, well, hopefully never gonna have to go above that maximum cost allowance, and then the whole project would remain aidable in
Right.
smaller
So
chunks over time.
that's one of the concepts that we use a lot with clients is, if you were doing smaller projects every 5 years, instead of trying to take care of all your needs, once every 15 years, when you do that project, that maximum cost allowance is it, right? So if you take one bite at the apple every 15 years, you're only gonna get that 19.3 million in construction at the middle school. But if you did projects every 5 years, over that same 15-year period, you'd have almost 60 million that you could do in aidable costs at that middle school. So that's definitely a factor that people try to kind of build in, sometimes doing smaller projects more often, so you can really maximize and leverage those aid ceilings to their fullest extent.
And we don't have the ability to do that because we have so much work that we need. But that's where, like what Rich was saying, right? There's a team now who understands in the future, we have to keep these projects going. With like tax neutral measures as close as we can, so that we can keep everything updated and not be in this situation again.
And the ADA stuff is pulled out? Or what is this?
So what was pulled out was the elevators, because we have technically functioning lifts. Yeah, second and third floor. So what is still included is the lift from the lowest level where the auditorium is up to the first floor where the bathrooms are, because we don't have another means to move a person. But that's not a great
So it's not
situation.
optimum.
No,
But
it's not.
now, to put in the lift, I assume, but just to make the record for the public to know, does not entail, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does not entail ripping up the steps. You can use the existing steps to put in this lift as was done with the other levels
Joe,
or
do you
not?
want to speak? It's not a corridor expansion like it would be in the other spaces.
In this version, We are removing the work at the two link corridors where we were rebuilding the steps and building elevators. That's out. But what's staying in is the lift that gets from the lower corridor down to the auditorium. So you technically have accessibility in the rest of the building because your lifts are functioning, but you do not have accessibility right now down to the auditorium. And the reason we're recommending to keep the auditorium level lift in the project is that there's a high probability that SED will come across that on the submitted plans and hold approval until you can remedy the accessibility problem to the auditorium level.
Thank you. I agree, it's not optimum, but it does comply, it will help any student that needs a lift. And for any of the taxpayers that objected to having elevators and ripping up the steps, this will not be done, and it is a much more cost-saving method current for us to do this.
What is the difference? I mean, by taking out the elevators and just putting in that one lift, what's the dollar value approximately?
Oh, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Was it 4.7? Elliot, do you have that?
The Linkway project was about 4.5 million. I don't know what part of that was just the auditorium. I think it was less than $1 million was just the auditorium work, but I don't have the hard numbers in front of
It
me.
was the auditorium work, I think was something like 400. And the link corridor is around 4.5, yeah.
But you're talking about 4.5 million to $500,000. About, right?
Right.
4.5 that would be removed from the project scope this time.
Right.
Yes.
Which again, this work will have to get done.
Yeah.
And for $5 a year to give students with disability ample time to get to their classrooms, it's kind of like, but
Well,
we're just looking for anything that we can
no,
cut it. Right.
you know, and I'm not trying to be I'm trying to
I understand.
figure out like, what are we trying to accomplish? I mean, so if we take out those elevators, we put in one lift, and then we come back in a year or 2 years or whatever the timing is to do the project, now we gotta, I would assume, once again, rip out stuff that we've redone. And, you know, now the cost of doing the second wave or the elevators is even bigger than it was.
It is bigger. It is 5% bigger every year. Yes. And that's actually a point that we haven't spoken about yet is, you know, you voted in the spring, failed, re-voted in November, failed. We didn't up the escalation on the numbers from the spring to November, but now we're looking at the spring again. So it will be a year. And, you know, my company will have to discuss with Palumbo and with Elliott the appropriate escalation to add to whatever form of a project you put back out to vote, because it will be 1 year later.
That's gonna be the reality every time we go forward.
Yes. Yes.
No question, Barry, we were looking for the calculation to a yes vote.
Yes.
But how do you, I mean,
And that's, yeah, but I mean, the parameters for that are kind of, who knows? You know, I mean, if there are people out there that, like I said, if I put up a capital prop for a nickel, they vote no. Yeah, I'll guarantee you, if we put up the fact that we have 10 million and maybe the energy performance contract, which costs nothing. If we put that up right now, there's a lot of people would vote no for some reason. Even though it has no real effect on the tax bill. So it's you know, like I said, I don't know what that number is. I don't know how to get, you know, I'd like to see 3,000 people voting this
I
next
think
time,
that's the key.
you know, I mean,
You're not gonna.
and then if that comes out no, then then we have to take serious looks at closing buildings, consolidating with other districts. You know, things that are gonna get us out of this shamble that we're in.
And that's a long-term plan, so, I mean, regardless,
Yeah.
we're talking about a couple of years before these problems are solved. So the administration's also been doing a lot of work around. Cause at this point, we're beyond an if, with some of these circumstances. We're looking at a when, right? And of course, we've had a pretty wet couple of weeks here, and so we're in a situation where we're contingency planning, and nobody wants to see kids go remote. We don't have this space. If we lose this building, we don't have this space, right? And so that, I mean, I want everyone to hear that said. The administration does not want to send your children home. We delayed because we have a two-tiered transportation system, and if we only delay one building, those kids automatically lose instruction for a day. Additionally, we had, by the end of the storm, we had every single building impacted in one way or another. So, you know, we will do everything that we can to maintain the continuity of operations, but the buildings may decide otherwise for us before we are ready, you know, with any of these repairs.
Well, the interesting thing was, this was not a big storm. I mean, it was a lot of rain, but we've all lived through more than an inch and a half of rain. I mean, I can't, I don't know.
And I mean, we have bigger problems, right? We are having leaks in places that never leaked before. So we can't even predict where it's even coming, right? So we're patching things, but we don't actually know the origin of some of these leaks. And so, you know, we're doing the best we can
As
with
in
it.
any roof, however, this roof is flat on the middle school.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't even aware of that. Even if you have a roof that is not a flat roof, the leak could be any place that water finds its way and then finds its way to its lowest point. But on a flat roof, it's more prone to leaking. It is not a great, I guess, roof for building purposes and maintenance.
Right.
The
And, you know,
replacement would be a pitched, not our typical house pitched roof, but it would be, that was a question that I asked early on. There would be a certain degree of elevation for water runoff. I don't know if anybody can confirm that, but I know I asked that at one point.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Okay.
So in a re-roofing project on a building with a flat roof, right? Flat in quotes, because it's technically a low slope roof with an 1/8 inch per foot pitch. So it looks generally flat, but it's not. It has the pitch of like a cross pitch on a sidewalk might have to shed water. And that's the way the flat roofs are constructed. So they do shed water, they shed water slowly. But this roof is very old. It's a gravel topped built up roof with layers of insulation beneath it, on top of a poor gypsum deck. So whatever water gets through the waterproofing membrane down into the insulation, you know, it's a sponge. It just sucks it up and it spreads and it goes, and you can't it's so difficult to find the origin. And you know, I think you all have seen the photos in the past presentations about the past repairs on the roofs and the amount of water being held up on those roofs. And so, you know, the new roof would be a code compliant low slope roof.
I want to expedite this, and I can give you my opinion. I think it would be fiscally irresponsible not to put it out pretty much what we put out in November and put it back out in May. We lost by 40 votes. If we can't spend the time to educate those that were not educated as far as what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and try to pull more people in that understand it but didn't vote the last time, I don't. That's just my 2 cents.
And personally, I agree with you. I mean, the fact that you know, we're gonna add, I don't know, 20% onto the overall, the long-term cost of this thing, because we're gonna do some stuff And then we're gonna have to go back in 3 years and rip it out and do it again because because we're trying to split this thing up into chunks. To me, that makes no sense. I think this isn't really an engineering discussion. It's not even really a building discussion. It's a discussion of how do we truly get the feedback from the entire district and not just, the people that, a couple of like 400 or 500 people that came out and voted. How do we get, 3,000 people to vote? How do we, get at least 2,500 people to vote? Then whatever it comes out, then we have to accept it. And at that point, again, in my personal opinion, we start on down the path of, minimizing the district. Get the district into, I don't know. I really don't know what to do past that, and hopefully we don't have to get there, but we do have the need to go out and make sure everybody is fully aware and fully aware of not voting is a no vote.
Well, and what does a no vote mean? It's not just that you're voting no, but what are the?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And maybe that needs to be spelled out in
And
writing.
I don't even know that we can do that, because the reality is you can say that we're gonna minimize the footprint of the district. There is no building outside of this building that can really take on enough kids to be able to do that.
But
So,
that's what I'm saying, but that's what a no vote means, is that we can't.
no, I
house
don't
your-
know what the no vote means, because if we don't have this building,
Right,
there's not even an option of, I don't know how we continue school.
well, there it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
There it is.
We have to get away from this concept that we can just vote no and we'll close the building and everything
No,
will
no,
be
no.
fine.
But they need to hear that.
Well,
Especially
and I'm
kids
saying
Voters
that.
that haven't voted. See, I think that's exactly it. We have to get the people to come out that did not come out, but we have to have, like a script. This is exactly what is needed. If there's no fluff in it,
It's that
there's no,
dire.
and, whether we have conversations on the side with people that have misconceptions or uninformed, misinformed, and that, but then to go out and say, we will have to close a building. What does that mean to you? It means maybe you have to quit your job and stay home with your kid. Like, it's all consequential, how you live and where you live and what your circumstance is, but we may have to close a building. I think if they can see certain things like that in writing, or, I mean, we
And I
had
hear what we're
the
saying
paper.
when we're saying close a building. I am saying that even closing a building, fine. Let's say that that's something that was decided, and I'm not saying fine. But if that is what is decided, the only options for closing a building and still maintaining the operations of the district would be one of the two elementary schools. And the reality is that decision to vote no and close a building puts us no closer to maintaining the operation of the district because of the condition this building is in. And so I don't even know that we can have a conversation about that, because we're talking about, in that situation, decimating Millbrook Central School District. I don't think people understand that.
Well, and there's so many parts to what we, if we can't find a way to better communicate this, or, make sure that everybody understands completely not just what we're asking to do, but what the effect of not doing it is. And then, then there's all kinds of fun things the state will do for us. Like regionalization and, I hate to even start thinking about some of those, but.
Yeah, like busing, the children an hour, maybe over the Weebatuck, but, we should just speak about facts, not what ifs. Facts are, there are problems here. I'm sure anybody who disputes this, can telephone the superintendent's office and visit the school and see for themselves. And I would invite the anybody who thinks there's a naysayer should do that. But following up on what Chris and Perry said about cutting this vote down for the capital project, it brings to mind what happened with the high school. And I think it needs to be said, the high school, when it went up to vote, what is it, about 13, 15 years ago, went up, failed twice. They kept cutting it back. What exists up there now is a locker room that's too small. And the sports teams still come down from the high school to this middle school, which at one time was the middle and high school, to use the larger locker room. There were other cutbacks like one zone air conditioning for the entire building, which was crazy at the time. I mean, when you really think about a lot of things that were cut back, it might have been better if the high school wouldn't have been built at that time and build it the way with the cutbacks that they made. So I echo the point that we probably go, if we can educate the people that need to come out and support this, that we go for the full project. Again,
Dina, your thoughts?
I would love to put everything back out there. I don't know, keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome is a viable or the smart thing to do. I think like Howard just mentioned in that example, things were cut back until it passed because it was needed and it was essential. And at one point, the community just agreed, okay, these are the basics, it's essential. I think we would have a better chance at getting something done instead of nothing, as we've seen the prior two votes by cutting it down. I know everything is necessary and not fancy and it is needed, but this building is vital because when Elm had the mold problem and the middle school absorbed Elm, vice versa, that can't happen. So the students and admin, this building cannot be absorbed into any other building. So this is, I believe is our most vital building in terms of space. And if we need to cut back more to preserve this building, I would be, although I obviously wouldn't love everything to pass, that hasn't happened, and my fear is it's just gonna go down again.
Well, the one thing I'll sort of clarify, the high school, they cut out this, they cut out that, they cut out this. Here's, and okay, that's the one we went with. The air conditioning stinks, the traffic flow is ridiculous, all those things. The difference in what we're talking about is the high school, that was it. Okay, now we need to do that other $15 million that we cut out because they'll live with it. We have no choice. What we're doing is cutting Alden out. So that's not fixing anything. So we're going to have to come back in, I don't know, 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and say, okay, remember that 18 million or 20, whatever it was, $1 million we cut out? We now need to get that as well.
Right.
And, it's.
And also remember, when the vote failed in May, we came back and we worked on it and basically brought it down to bare bones, telling the public this is absolutely everything we need. So now what do? Skin it back more and say, well, I guess we really didn't need to do that. No, in my opinion, these are still the things that desperately need to be done. That's the only
Even
reason.
more so now.
Well,
Caroline
yeah.
said. We're desperate.
I also wanted to add, I don't know if education issue, there have been endless presentations, videos, pamphlets, everything has been sent out. How do we get people to care? Where's the empathy for what is going on in this district? For the students, the children who will be the future of this community, hopefully one day. Where are their rights to have, if they are dancing in the halls because it's air conditioned, great, I'm fine with that. But it's also like a basic human right, like why wouldn't we want them to dance in the halls because there's air conditioning, they're not miserable. So, where's the care? And I don't think education, in my opinion, is the issue.
Chris, your thoughts?
I do have my thoughts on, we're just kind of talking about getting people out, but also what do we put out to vote? I would love to put the same thing out again. Because it's all needed, right? But I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I don't, we're not gonna flip the no voter. I think something similar to our yearly general budget passes. Right? That seems to be a price point that is acceptable to people, so this in psychologically is more similar to that, of course, spread out over many years. And then it's all about just getting people to show up. We can't turn that
I
over.
mean, even our yearly, you know, the operational budget and,
Yeah.
and even our election,
Those are,
we get almost no one to
Right.
vote. I mean, so, you know, we really need to rethink that, like, how in the hell are we gonna get you know, 2,000-3,000 people to come out and vote versus,
During the pandemic, we got like 1,400 because they were mail-in.
no. Yeah, maybe that's what we have to do. I'm also still disturbed by this, all these people that have said they did not get any mailings from us. I mean, I know there were a lot of people that threw them right in the bin in the post office, because we get a lot of those. But I don't know. Yeah. Your thoughts?
I agree with Chris. I do think there needs to be some education though, because like, I don't live in Millbrook. So I don't get stopped in the grocery store or anything like that, but the things that I did hear of why somebody may have voted no is an incorrect assumption, or it's something like, well, I just didn't like what I thought I heard about blah, blah, blah. Like, it didn't seem to me like a real reason to vote no for these kids who, you know, want to go to school. So I do think that, however we do it, there should be, I think we can flip some no's, but I do think considering the amount of kids that are in school, one parent per kid, plus, you know, some other community, I mean, I have people on my street that don't have kids in the school and they voted. So there are people out there that will do it. So it's tough because I think some of the public would just say, it's just the roof in the middle school, so let's just fix it. But that's part of the education and part of the communication. So I think if we do go forward with the same budget, it's gotta be however we have to do it, go door to door, you know? So I'm willing to put forth, because I do think everything is very much needed.
I think we absolutely need everything there. I think it is not reasonable to expect a different outcome if we put it all down now in the same form. So I think it should be smaller, not drastically, but something to make some effort to meet these voters where they're at. They're telling us no, it means something.
So we take the ADA stuff out? I mean, do you think that's enough?
I don't know, building, if that's what it is, if that's where we could potentially be in 3 or 5 years is closing a building. I mean, we could close a building when mold happened. It's not ideal. Nobody wants to be there. And we should make plans to show exactly what that really looks like. Are we gonna end up being a district with 35 kids per class? How, I mean, those are the decisions we have to make to squeeze kids into rest space. But I think, while there may be a cost to deferring this work, 5% a year, whatever that may be, there's a great cost to not doing anything now. And I'm more concerned with that than anything else. If we don't get a yes soon, that impact is beyond anything people are really confident.
Chris, any-
No, and I don't necessarily 100% disagree with Dave. Obviously, the number one goal is to get a yes in May for our truly most immediate roof gonna collapse needs, but everything is just as important. I don't know. You know, it's the magic number. If we remove 10 million and it drops it from, you know, 250 a year to 200, is that enough? I mean, I don't think people said no for $50 a year. I think a lot of it was principle, thinking that there wasn't proper maintenance done and we let things go, and a lot of things that if they came to the meetings and they heard us out or listened to the board meetings, they wouldn't really have that impression, I wouldn't think. And that's the education. It's more of just the eye
Well, it's
opening.
also more than principal, Chris, and for the rest of the board. A lot of people are upset, and rightly so, that with the taxes and the only thing they can vote on is school taxes. At the town boards, they can be heard, but the town board makes the decision on breaking a cap of, if they want, of 2%. Fire districts can do the same thing. They can break the cap based upon the town board, the majority over voting it. We are limited to a 2% cap. My personal issue is if the state comes down with all these mandates like they have, unfunded, they don't give it back to the community. They say, community, you fund it, you find it, the money to pay for it. And the people should be upset with the elected representatives in the state legislature, your assembly person and your state senator. But they keep electing them over and over. And they're the ones that keep passing these laws that affect the school districts, then to raise your taxes to cover these ideas that they on high tell us to do. And a lot of it is, this is a way for the people, taxpayer, to say enough. It's always at the local level that they feel that they're empowered to say no. And I think a lot of it is just, it gives the local taxpayer a say.
Yeah.
And we don't have to decide tonight on this project, do we? Right now,
No.
we need people, not only for board members to think about it, but anybody that may be listening in or may watch this, on YouTube later on, to think about their decision.
So and I-
Yes or no?
I don't really want to give the impression that we have time, because
No,
we
we
really don't. I know, what Joe had even just said, we're talking about cost escalation and everything else. That means that we have to have pretty close to a finalized concept leaving this meeting. We have 2 meetings next month, and then at the first February meeting, we have to have something solid. And our design professionals need time in between to be able to get us all of the scope back. The construction manager needs to get pricing, working with Joe, and Fred at BBS, and then Lauren and Matt are working on EPC numbers, every time we ship something, so we really don't have a lot of time, and, that's part of where we are with the November vote, and
But I think we can, like, things like, if the board needs to, I think at this point, needs to make a decision on, are we going back pretty much where it was, minus whatever we can think of to scrape out, like the ADA stuff? Or are we going to continue to move down this, let's cut out Alden and let's just focus on really the middle school and Elm? And then, we can fine tune that, I think, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong from a scheduling standpoint. I think we have a little bit of time to fine tune that, but we need to make that decision whether or not
We can shoot for the 7th, and if not, we can always have, an interim meeting or something, right? Just so we
Yes.
can get it done by the
Yes.
middle of January.
Yeah.
The one thing I would ask is just what we were going back to as far as just the average cost per taxpayer. If you can just amend that sheet to reflect how it would have been the previous one.
Yeah, we'll update the report.
And then just double check the last one so we can kind of put them side to side, because I think just, to David's point and everyone else's, like, really, it's important for us to see how much we're actually gonna save by doing it. I don't necessarily still agree with it, but if it's $55 compared to $382, that might change my mind. So it's just important to get those numbers.
Right, yeah, because again, all the numbers are correct, it was just the time frame.
Right.
Yeah, it was different, so we'll update that, we can get back to you probably tomorrow or.
Okay, yeah, and then we can just pull the last one.
I also think we should be really seriously considering the emergency declaration for roof. I know we couldn't do all of it, but we should be able to do at least a section.
I don't know how we can, thing is collapsing as we speak, Okay, and does anybody?
Well, that would, no, go ahead, Barry. I was just gonna say that, to Elliot's point, if we did do that, that would deplete every penny that we had to use.
and we only have
I
one
understand.
opportunity to do that.
But we can,
That's all of our reserves.
Okay.
I get
But
it,
if
but
we
if
wait,
the school's closing every time it rains, it's an emergency.
I
I don't know how you look at it any
But I
other.
But I don't know that it's gonna keep the school from closing
We
either.
may have to close anyway for a number of other reasons if we don't have that.
It's not gonna be a
unassigned
big
fund
enough,
balance.
it's not gonna be a big enough section of the roof to be able to maintain operations. We literally had like rain falling on the first floor last night. Last week it was on the second floor here. We have multiple, or the most number of classrooms on the third floor now with leaks in the classrooms. So, I mean,
Not to mention, if you redo the second floor, you're disconnecting the first and third, so you're cutting off lunchrooms and gyms and everything else too.
there's just a lot of
Well,
different.
But there's no, and did you guys?
Take time to execute too.
Yeah, with my roof leaking now, I'm not gonna wait until I can do the whole thing. I'm gonna do something.
No, I agree. It's just a matter of what do we do and where, and I don't wanna give a false, I agree that we should do something. I don't wanna give a false impression that that's going to
Absolutely.
save the day, because there's so many real live continuous leaks in this building right now that I can't promise that's gonna keep school forever, cause
No,
that's not
absolutely
real.
not.
Well, and the parts that have failed like badly, are they covered by insurance or not? I know,
So we'd have to front cash and then get reimbursed on some level. So depleting our cash reserves would hamper our ability to do that. Sometimes they'll let you work directly with the restoration company, but that's not a given.
right,
And just to clarify, like, I want the board to know the numbers that we're dealing with. Since I've taken this position, we have appropriated, more fund balance in 1 year to the next than we carry in the 4% unassigned. So that just to be clear, we have 1.3 million in unassigned fund balance, and we project expenses over $1.7 million annually over the last 3 years. So that means if we blow out our reserves entirely, we're already projecting to be in a potential deficit 1 year to the next immediately.
But we currently have a little more in the unassigned fund balance that we were planning on dedicating to the capital project.
Right now, once, but that may not even be enough to do one section of the roof.
Mhm.
Because you're looking at a $4.8 million projected expense, and if you divided it by 3, just, you know, in rough numbers, it's close, but it may not be comprehensive.
Yeah.
Especially when we're dealing with a lot of unknown hazmats. I know I spoke with Joe about the potential for ACM, lead, all the things that we don't know until we start ripping it apart. And then, and Joe, you can probably speak to this better. If I miss something, please jump in, but part of that cost is the overlapping scope where we're doing hazmat once and we're doing decontamination and removal once for the whole system. So if you did, I'm just saying, if you did the system in 3 pieces, that 5 million could become 6.5.
So
Yeah,
absolutely. We've
certainly,
been trying to
the
be
economy of
responsible
scale,
for all along,
absolutely.
emerging these things, emerging costs. We're beyond that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've been trying to do the very best thing we can do for the taxpayers. By
I-
combining costs and making it as cheap as possible in the long run. And they keep saying no. At some point, we have to do something.
Well, and I don't,
Can I just
Go ahead.
finish and tailing on what Elliot said? So yes, there's economy of scale is certainly a point, as Elliot mentioned. Also, like say you were to schedule an early vote for your capital reserve and dispersed funds to replace the roof, and we were able to replace the roof there 9 months earlier. Then the HVAC came on board, and hopefully you had a successful bond vote later. You got the HVAC. The problem you run into there is the marrying of the roof and the HVAC work, because we're going to be cutting holes in the roof. We're going to be putting up posts and steel beams to hold the new mechanical units that will go on the roof. So you might, even if you replace the roof and you had a nice fresh roof, we're going to be cutting a lot of it later on to put the HVAC in. Optimally, they go hand in hand. Otherwise, you are wasting money.
yeah, I mean, my point is if you had cash in hand to do one section of the roof today, how long would it still take to get it done?
Right.
Probably. What's the time frame do you think that you'd be able to do that?
So, I mean, we can do them over the summer.
If you had
couple
cash
days.
in hand, if you had cash in hand today and you declared it an emergency and you had us design it immediately, We could get it up to the state. We could possibly get you an approval in February, and you might just make summer 2025 to do work. You might just make it. If you came to that decision in February, you certainly would not make it.
Well, the other thing that we're gonna need is, John, we need you guys to, even if they seem like outrageous ideas, you know, I'm gonna have hired 4 new people and they're gonna sit on the roof with buckets and scoop the water off the, whatever. We need to take a look at what our options are for, you know, just continuing operations. I mean, we're not,
We'll go up there before the rain comes, and ensure the drains are cleared. We're up on it twice a week at least. We know rain's coming, we're up there clearing the drains. Afterwards, we're up to a broom, pushing the water down into the drains, which is just sitting there.
but if there's, you guys, if there's
Thinking outside of the
anything.
box.
Yeah, no, we got.
in-
Like
well,
a big
leak-
tent, like
we
a
got
big
leak
gigantic
diverters
tent
for
for
water.
the school.
Put a
I think
tent up.
it is important to talk about though, because, you know, one of the things is, well, why can't they be there on Facebook? Why can't they be there earlier? We have a finite number of humans, like human capital is a real factor in this, right? Number one, there's only so much we can do while the rain is coming down as fast as it was coming down last week. We had people here until 11 o'clock at night. We had people here as early as 3, 4 in the morning. You know, there's only so much that we can do, right? That's just a reality. This morning again, John was here at 4 a.m. We were back and forth with what's the condition of every single room in this building. These are the same people that were icing, you know, salting for the ice and snow yesterday, and then are here dealing with a leak until whatever hour of the evening. So, you know, I appreciate hearing you say if we need more people, because that might also be a reality for just getting through in the meantime. Because we can't really work them more hours than they are working now.
No, that's what I'm saying. Come up with a, you know, I think we could keep the place running if we had 4 guys and 4 new guys and a, you know, a giant vacuum cleaner and a, you know, an ice maker. I don't know what else you'd need, but
And then that's
figure out.
the cost too, right? Because
Yeah.
and with the tax cap
I
being
know.
what it is, then we're giving up a teacher, we're giving
I
up
know.
aides, monitors.
I know, but you know, if we have to do that to just keep the place running for a year or 6 months, we don't have any choice. We don't have a choice, so.
Keep in mind that, like all last winter, John and his crew were in manually running the HVAC system, and it hasn't improved since then. And
Yeah.
so on top of the roof leaks, there's just to keep the heat on in the building, it's a manual operation.
Correct.
So. All right, any other questions, comments from you guys? Or, these folks? All right, unless anybody has a problem, I'd like to modify the agenda to allow for, because normally we do our questions and comments from the public at the end of the meeting. But since we have our experts here, and we still have a lot of other stuff to do, I'd like to alter the agenda. Is that okay with everybody?
Absolutely.
All right, so do we have any input from the,
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. Okay. I don't know how this works.
just say.
Say my name?
Yeah, your name.
Okay, Chuck Richwine. Hey, look, I've been here before. Okay, I mean, the school population's down 30%, guys. All right, my grandson goes to school here. He went to pre-K. He was in a 10-person class with a teacher and a teacher's aide. He's now in kindergarten with 15 students, a teachers and a teacher's aides. No offense. That just looks like a misuse of the operating. That's not the right size number. And the view in the public is if those numbers are incorrect in running a classroom, then you guys probably don't know how to handle a capital project either. Okay? That's the perception. I voted no twice against your budget. I'll probably vote no again. If you want greater participation, put it on voting day in November. You'll get everybody to vote. All right, as it is, those of us who want to vote no, make a special trip up here to vote no. If Warren Buffett walked in here today, and wrote you a check for $55 million, I have 100% confidence you'd misspend the money. Okay, that's my perception. Okay, I think you need to max out the state aid, all right, and go for everything you can. I'll bet you your ability to run a capital project is in the $3 to $5 million per year for this school district. Anything more, I think it'll just get misspent. All right, and the fact that you haven't explained to the population that you're sitting on $12 million, why can't you spend it?
We did.
Okay, you did.
Sorry, go ahead.
I got the pamphlet. I went online. I looked at this stuff. It didn't make it, and I'm an engineer. I'm not a dumb person. Okay, so if you can't sell your case to somebody like me, you have a 0% chance of selling it to a lot of other people. All right, the view from people is we've had it with New York taxes, right up to here, at the state level, the local level. We just had a conversation on the drive up here. Should we just cut our losses and move out of here? Okay. I just look at you guys and I just don't have a confidence in your ability to spend money. I'm sorry, I don't have a confidence in you to spend it efficiently. I think you guys can piss it away, but I just don't think the return we'll get is what you're gonna need. Okay? And look, like I said, vote in November. You'll get everybody there. Okay? Everybody will vote. All right, so anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, John. You wanna say anything?
The only thing, I'm Ann Richwine. The only thing I would say, is that to piggyback on what some of you were talking about, we are fairly active in this community. And I will tell you that I learned more in the hour and a half sitting here than I did from any of your marketing material about the budget vote, okay? I'd be interested in, I know that you had a number of public forums for people to go to. I'd be interested in what percentage of the community actually attended that, okay?
Well, let me give you that one. We did two before this last vote. First one, we had one person show up to, and he's the mayor, or was the mayor of Millbrook. The second one, we had no one show up.
Right. So what you're doing, you know, from the cheap seats, what you're doing isn't working. So what you have to look at is you have a product. Your product is this budget. You want to sell that product. You have to market it better. Okay. You have to drill it down to how much is it going to cost Ann Richwine a year to make this budget work? Okay, how much is it? What does that mean? What does that mean for me each day, each week, each month, whatever it is? Right now, you have the information out there, but you're expecting people to come to the information. And I think the other thing that you need to do is not just as a board be out there marketing it. I think you need to find people who are committed to this community and ask them to become your allies and be out there talking positive talk about whatever you're looking to have done. Because like I said, in the hour and a half that I've been here, I've learned more about your budget and the needs for this budget than I did in all the times that we've been voting. So I voted twice without knowing the information from this meeting. So that's why your budget didn't vote, in my estimation.
Thank you. Okay, any others online?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, guys. And so the plan is that at this January 7th meeting, we really need to decide, you know, what we're taking forward. At the same time, let's think through, I mean, Ann's point of finding community leaders that can take some of this forward as well. I think that's something we ought to think our way through. All right. All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, why don't we, it's been almost 2 hours, why don't we take 5 minutes? You need to use the facilities. All right, next is the, are we good?
Yes.
Next is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Dina, do I have a second?
Second.
Any, discussion, questions, comments, anything you want to hold?
Nothing told, but I just had one question on 10 and 11. It's the same question. Oh, okay. Page, am I looking at 10? I think I'm looking at 10 right now, but it's the same on 11. On page 2, I just think it might be a typo, but it would affect somebody. So it's talking about the vacation at the rate of 35 vacation days per year. And then the option to carry over 10. So wouldn't the total maximum accumulation be 45 days?
No,
No, it's not.
no,
Okay.
it's capped. It's a bank, so it's
Okay.
capped.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Oh, now I see. Okay, that was it.
thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Anything else? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Next is, BOCES Spotlight. That's out there for your, entertainment. President, Vice President report, don't have anything on, the Dutchess County School Board Association, other than I believe it is on January 16th or 15th. A group of us are going to meet with Sue Serino on, just how ridiculous this is all getting, and then nobody listens to us and they don't care and we hate them, and, you know, just in general. Should be an interesting discussion. I'm not sure it's gonna change anything, but should be an interesting discussion. Chris, did you have anything?
No, I didn't.
Yes. So, thank you, everyone. We have a bunch of updates from our E&L department, actually. So, if you have an opportunity to visit Elm Drive, in the coming weeks, you will see that there are labels courtesy of the E&L department. They've gone throughout the building and, labeled a whole bunch with, both the English word, translated words into home languages and also pictures. That is a strategy that's used for English language learners to be able to orient them, but also for them to see the words in print, both in their home language, if that's a strength that they have, and then being able to make that transfer into the target language, which is English. High school had their winter concert and art showcase last Wednesday, so congratulations to all of our musicians and artists. Much of the administrative team missed part of that, dealing with the rain that was coming down in the district. We have a number of students who are here, newly registered English language learners, so we did expand that department this year, and thankfully so. Every time we get a new student, regardless of their level of proficiency, we're having to adjust that schedule to make sure that we can meet all of the needs. So I just want to give a shout out to that department for their flexibility, because they have had so many iterations of their schedules, but the important thing is they are meeting all of our students, their needs at this point for the number of hours that they're required to have, or minutes of instruction, I guess, that they're required to have. The E&L department is also creating a beautiful website. We've been able to see some of it in its infancy stages, but again, currently the languages that we have here as home languages being Spanish, Portuguese, and French. We have those families will be able to access translated materials. It's also giving them access to some of the building web pages for highlights and information. And so I want to thank the department for doing that as well. So far, this is actually in Dr. Watkins' report, but we kind of felt that this meeting was going to be a little bit long, so we wanted to just give you some highlights. We've had conversations previously about students who, are looking to complete their high school education elsewhere. So currently, Ms. Domino has only had 3 applications for tax exams, and has collected some data as to, reasons why folks, I don't believe any of them were decided necessarily. They were just exploring the ideas for, private schools. But we were able to get some data from that small group, as to why it is that they're looking elsewhere. And for some of them, it kind of seems like they really just want to broaden their horizons, kind of been with the same group this whole way and just looking for, you know, more opportunities in terms of courses or in terms of extracurriculars and also in terms of socialization. So that was kind of the common themes, I would say, throughout all of that. We've just done the capital project update and John and Elliot will be walking through our facilities update. Just given some of the damage for the past week and also some of the efforts that we have engaged in to be able to maintain the safety of the districts, because anytime we have water infiltration, we have to worry about contaminants and or things like mold growth. Disrupted materials can sometimes have some hazmat materials that are affected. So Elliot will speak a little bit about what that's looked like over the past week. From our athletic department, we are preparing for a potential merger for softball for the spring, which was last year as well. With Weebatuck again, Weebatuck would be the host for that sport. So just to give you a heads up that is likely to come unless things shift significantly for spring sports. And other news, on December 10th, our pre-K students enjoyed a walk throughout the village. And they're learning about where they live so that they were able to learn a little bit about what makes the community and where those things are, the post office, the supermarket, the fire department, those types of community organizations and spaces. On December 12th, the Elm and Alden students participated in the Parents' Night Out, which was sponsored by the PTO. And they had 71, I believe it was, students who participated in that, and wanted to also thank the high school honor society students and the staff members who volunteered their time to support that effort. There were stations for crafting, board games, dance party. They had a holiday card making section, and then there were other indoor games. So thank you to all who participated and supported that. We also had our annual snowflake run down at Elm Drive, which is Mr. Russell's annual thing. It's pretty much the cutest thing ever. And so students who were able to go the distance, they get to join the Elm Drive Long Distance Club. So thank you for all of those who participated. It's super cute. Not my cup of tea. I have no need to be in a long distance running club, but it is absolutely adorable to watch. And so just some upcoming events. Some of them are a little further out in the spring. Some of them are coming up soon, as early as tomorrow. There will be the winter pageant for Elm Drive at the Millbrook High School. Just the reminder for the 12 cop presentation, there is a link there. And also Regents exams will be from the 21st through the 24th at the high school. So lots of very exciting things. We weren't gonna do any presents. Did you want to?
Originally, I assumed that first part would be very long. I was hoping there would be a lot more.
Yeah, we were gonna go into the facilities presentation because.
Yeah. So I had asked to just post the presentation for Steve and for Amy. With that, John, you wanna, I don't know, John or Elliot is gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you wanna just walk through some of like the photos and I mean, we actually have made a spreadsheet. Looking at multiple different information We looked at all the spaces of roof leaks in this building in particular, this being the worst. We looked at the supplies purchased and the cost of supplies, the labor costs of this roof failure, and then also, like I had said, we had the risk and safety coordinator. Is that-
Brian, our safety coordinator from Dutchess Bosse. So this is just some of the things we were dealing with that predicated us calling him in. These are short little video clips of what's been actually
That one's
happening.
really hard.
Yeah, that one's.
The one on the right is actually dripping water also.
Yeah, I'm just gonna show you, if you look at the lights reflecting in the floor, this is outside of the tech wing, like I said, our most critical computer equipment in terms of student facing devices. You know, I can show you lots of different versions of the same stuff here.
And Elliot, that did not take very long for the floor to look like
That
that.
top left one,
Right.
that's in
Say
the
it again.
custodial closet where you have electrical panels.
Yeah.
One on the top left.
So I just wanna organize this in a way that I can share it.
The,
on Teams.
Yeah, no, it's,
I
so
just-
just to give you context, the one on the now bottom, right, which was, that's the leak on the first floor, and that's yesterday, so that's not even with the bigger storm. This was yesterday, after our secondary faculty meeting, by the end of the elementary faculty meeting, so you're talking about no longer than an hour and 15 minutes, that is what the count looks like.
that's what I was wondering, how long that took.
Yeah, I'll share just these three images while we're speaking, so that the people at home can kind of see what we're dealing with here.
And just being reminded that as of last week, there were 27 different locations in the middle school that were affected. And we've just been adding more day by day essentially, and for different reasons. So as recently as yesterday,
Yeah.
we had heaving tiles in the main corridor here. And so that looks, and correct me if I'm wrong, that looks as though there was water on an interior cinder block wall
Yep,
that's gone under the floor and caused it to heave.
Yes.
And so because of the type of tiles that were used around the date of construction, we had to have the environmental testing done to make sure that there's no asbestos containing material there that's been disruptive. And we found similar today on the third floor.
So,
So is the analysis back on all that stuff or not?
no,
Any,
Should be, put in a rush on it, we should get that
yeah,
tomorrow.
the yesterday tests haven't come back yet. The last week test, I think he's gonna
The
get.
auditorium we got.
Yeah, the auditorium we got back negative. So the bigger challenge here is that, because of the laws governing asbestos containing material having taken effect in the early seventies and our building, all our three original buildings, the youngest of the three oldest buildings was built in 1964. So that means Elm, Alden and the middle school are all pretty well laden with hazmat. And I will say that there's assumptions of asbestos containing materials in all of the, in a great majority of the plaster, the building materials themselves, the floor tiles themselves, as well as the mastic that adheres, the adhesive used for the floor tiles, the blackboards on the walls. And so in any one of these situations where we have infiltration and damage as a result of that infiltration, we have to go ahead and test. So just to give an example, the auditorium ceiling is presumed to contain asbestos containing material. The way that construction was applied back then, or the solid asbestos material into the plaster and then apply it, which means it didn't always apply evenly. And so one of the challenges with testing a space that large is depending on how big the bucket was and how evenly it was mixed, you might have a bunch of it over here and not a whole lot of it over here. And so this might test negative and you move 3 feet and it would test positive. And so we cannot, with the health and safety of our occupants in mind, we can't just assume that a space that big is clear just because 7 samples came back clear or even 14 samples came back clear. And so every single time there's damage, we have to test the actual affected area. And when the inspector came this most recent time, he goes, guys, if this ceiling keeps falling, you can't have people in here unless somebody comes in and really tells you that you're not at risk of it falling on somebody. So now our largest instructional spaces out of play at our middle school. Our second largest instructional space in the district is now out of play. When you think about the ramifications of just daily operations, let alone you lost your concert, you know, we're losing a number of assembly events that we've been working with Mr. Gabel, locate and reschedule. And so again, as Caroline said, and I want to reiterate something that she said in the last couple of minutes, we're not getting the same leaks in the same places. So if you think about what Mr. Reddick said from BBS, our architect, that as water penetrates the waterproofing membranes of the roof system and begins to spread and disperse through the insulary layers beneath, we're finding water in places we're not used to finding it. We're not finding it on day one of the storm where we expect to find it. And then on day 3 of the storm, now it showed up where we expected it, but may or may not be also where we didn't expect it. And this game of whack-a-mole is getting out of control. And I think one of the things that we've redirected our efforts on right now, and I'd say in the last 7 days, is our maintenance department has been really good about putting things back together so that they don't look damaged. It may or may not give a false impression that there is not significant damage, but what it did for us in terms of tracking is it inhibited our ability to look at the comprehensive level of damage from the inside. We have the roof reports from the scans above looking down, but now we're underneath looking up and going, all right, and I ask you as you walk out of the building and you walk down the hallway, every single ceiling tile that has been removed is an area of a previous leak. Whether it was in the last 48 hours or the last 7 days or the last 3 weeks. Every tile that we took out was wet at some point in this school year. So just know that when you think about the volume of damage, not just the extent of damage, the sheer volume of instances of damage and infiltration is getting to a place where we don't have enough buckets to put under the leaks. And now we're seeing more floor tiles popping up, which is like that secondary damage, right? The first damage is the water coming into the building. Now it's seeping through the walls and into the floors, and now it's popping the floors up. And Perry said a number of times, right? 1 loose tile, we can take care of it. 4 loose tiles, it starts to get sticky. 10 loose tiles, I gotta close the room. So it's gonna, you know, short-term effects, that classroom's out of play. Right now, we have 2 classrooms out of play. By next week, it could be 6 classrooms out of play. I can't telegraph. The most concerning thing for us, and I'd say, you know, when John and I meet every morning to talk about this, where's the new leak? How many of the old leaks are leaking? You know, it gets to a point where I don't even want to put a file box in a closet because.
No, and just to be transparent with the Board of Education, we actually, the day before this storm, we executed a full relocation of all of our permanent files to another building because we just couldn't chance it, and it's a good thing we did, because the leak on the left is the closet next to what was our file room. So, you know, we're within like feet of having really catastrophic damaged things, right? I know, Elliot, you have some pictures, but we have every single file cabinet with any records that need to be retained for legal reasons, whether it be PPS records or personnel records or business office records. We have them all tarped, and this is how our people are working in their offices. And they're tarped because it's that important that we just can't take a chance. Our permanent records are being boxed into plastic boxes so that we can, you know, all of that is covered right now. And it's all being reboxed into plastic boxes as quickly as we can obtain them from vendors, because we just can't take chances.
So what's interesting to me is, I mean, the temperature right now, the water's running. You know, it's coming down, it's hitting the roof, but then it's going through and onto the floor. What happens when this all freezes and we get 1.5 feet of snow?
That's what we've been talking about every morning. Once it freezes, it's gonna start splitting the seams. They did the roof, they have roof seams, and when it freezes, it starts to thaw out, and seams open up, and that's when we really get bad. So this is just the beginning.
What
It's a
about
it's a
your-
larger concentration of water too, because it's frozen into a big spot, it all melts. And now you're getting this huge influx of water into a concentrated location. And with every. From my amateur roof. No. I think you've.
Sure, glad you're here, Steve.
That's my one piece. I was waiting for us to talk about that earlier, but that's a really big thing for anyone who's ever, I mean, I put a new roof on my first home. And one of the reasons was in the winter when the ice damming happens and that when it goes and it attacks one area and now you're looking at the spot and we're already completely in trouble, let alone having a layer of ice
Yeah, the
somewhere.
worst is ahead of us.
Remember, John, I told you about, like, if you need more people to, you know, get up on the roof and shovel and stuff,
You got your guy right there.
you got your guy, man.
Duties as
I'm gonna go
assigned.
Saturday, go
No,
Saturday.
I also wanted to.
so what about from a weight standpoint, you know, if you put all this ice and snow up there, are we gonna get to the point where we're actually having complete, not just water running through it, but complete crawl?
Part of it, and BBS is gonna help us get, structural engineer's assessment, but part of that assessment is weight load, snow load, but it's also the actual load. So, you know, we have structural steel. I don't know if you remember, we've shown pictures of what some of the steel looks like at our overhangs and our vestibules that have had impregnation of water. They're starting to rust. Is it bad enough that it's gonna snap? I don't know. But is it a this year problem? Is it a 5-year problem? Is it a 2-year problem? I don't know. The other piece of this is seasonally, the complications change, but there's always complications, right? So in the fall, heavy rains like we had this past 2 weeks. In the winter, ice jamming and then rain on top of it. And that happens when you have 2 inches of rain on top of 2 inches of standing ice and that rain's falling at 45, 50 degrees and it's melting the ice as it hits it and it's creating effectively 5 inches of standing water coming into the building. And the one thing that we haven't discussed yet is the environmental concerns that prompted our investigation of Elm's HVAC system as a comprehensive system in terms of indoor air quality and moisture mitigation to prevent mold growth. All of those conditions exist here at the middle school as well. Every single one of those environmental conditions exists here. And we have the added variable of an influx of moisture and water into a building that's already predisposed to having indoor air quality challenges from bringing in humid air from the outside and flooding it into the building. So with all of these things, the benefit that we have is one of the tests that Mr. Calandria did for BOCES is he checked our relative humidity, indoor air quality, temperature settings. So not to get super into the weeds, but one of the ways to fight relative humidity is with heat. Which means when we had that big storm last week, I had John keep the boilers running in this building all night to keep the temperature elevated to prevent any potential temperature drops that would then exacerbate relative humidity levels and possibly proliferate mold growth. So thankfully, this time of year, our ambient relative humidity is around 17 to 30%. You need a sustained 60% relative humidity to foster mold growth. So right now, we're okay. But in 4 or 5 months, when the humidity outside starts to creep up and we still have the rain coming and we still have the ice damming, then our indoor air quality is going to be susceptible to more challenges that are going to make it hard for us to manage. So it's like compound issue after compound issue.
Are we, and I'm sure, are we nervous about like, I know we have to get through 3 days basically. Until there are no, at least children, but I'm not concerned with anyone else, but like, I don't even know how to ask like the question. Are you nervous that the roof is gonna fall on a kid kind of thing where
I think.
somebody's gonna get hurt, you know?
I think we're examining it area by area, room by room. I think the auditorium was the first glaring, oh my God, this hard deck might fall down. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of.
Also a very expansive section
Yeah.
of roof, right? I mean, there's no load-bearing walls in the middle of the auditorium, so you're dealing with like a huge roof
Section,
piece,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, that is the benefit we have in these smaller rooms, that there are load-bearing walls separating them from the full length of the hallway, right? And so that is one of the reasons why we had said, you know, I may be contacting the board to let you know that we'll be clearing this building at some point next week if we can get an engineer in here. Because if we need them to do that to make sure that everybody is safe upon return, then we have to do that.
Yeah. Right, if you're free.
I mean, we're fortunate to have next week coming to be able to have the possibility.
Yeah, we need that,
Keep
peace of mind.
right.
For sure.
You know, I said it before, and you know, I'll say it again, if there's something that you need, you know, 2 additional sump pumps that you can stick up on the roof, I'm making it up, but if there's something that we need to try to keep this place running, we need to know, you know, and we don't need to wait for the next board meeting, we can always call an emergency meeting or whatever.
I think, yeah, right now, for what we would need in that regard, we can do it with operating, finances.
But even if it's people, you know, you can't have guys in here at 4 o'clock in the morning, work until midnight. And, you know, God forbid they get hurt, you know, messing around in the middle of the night on the roof. Even if, I mean, I don't even know if this exists, but even if we need a, what do you call it, contractor to come in and, hey, look, we need you to be up on that roof, making sure the water doesn't get over an inch deep. And again, I'm making this crap up, but.
No, I appreciate that. And we've opened up a purchase order with the firm that did our assessment. We have an open PO with them under a state contract or a purchasing agreement that allows us to access them for time and materials. It's an unbudgeted expense. We're gonna find the money, and that's part of what those reserves or the fund balance monies are for, right? Is the stuff we didn't see coming. So we may need to dip into a little bit of that. But again, you know, it's a moving target. It's not
Yeah,
gonna,
that's.
every time we patch a leak, it migrates. And so, you know, to the extent possible, yeah, we definitely appreciate the support, and then we want to be fully transparent with the board on all of the expenses, right? Labor and materials, like, and contractor services, like, they're all in play right now.
And, you know, I mean, I don't know how much it would be worth, but, you know, even if you need us to, I don't know, come help. But, all right,
Well, we appreciate that. I mean, we do. Our
Sure.
Our staff has been awesome, and at the ready. I mean, the unfortunate part is when it is literally raining inside, there's not anything we can really do about it until the water slows, right? And that was kind of the situation we were in last week, is trying to contain it as best as possible until morning, until we can actually, you know, try and, like John was saying, you know, start sweeping the water towards the drains and getting it away from the areas that are affected, but it's more than just one area.
Like on the roof, I know you said it puddles in certain spots. Is
The
it,
third floor.
is there like one massive puddle or is there like 38 little puddles?
It's like, and large. And they did that roof up there, they did not pitch the roof towards the drain.
Right.
The water's not going down the drain. It's just sitting there on top of the classroom.
What also happens is as the insulary layers deteriorate, it creates bellies in the rubber. So on the 3rd floor, you have rubber on top of insulation. The insulation will start to deteriorate, crumble, you get the bellies, like John said, there's a drain here, and there's a puddle right here. The 2nd and the 1st floors are upside, they call upside down gravel rooms or draining, we can't even see the puddles all the time until you're actually walking on it, moving around rocks, right? And so unless it rises to the level of, breaks that surface tension, sometimes there's puddles we don't even see.
all right. So you're gonna do like one of those singing in the rain videos with the garages and stuff?
Hold it together, we're in bad shape.
All right, any other questions for John or Elliot?
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, go home, get some sleep.
No.
The next, in the new business section, I asked Cheryl to give us just a brief, you know, we sent our, attorney election out with an RFP. Just give us the status. We hopefully will be ready to act on that in January. But Cheryl, did you want to just?
So, I sent everybody an email with a link to be able to, access all of the information. And so I just wanted to ask if anybody, needed anything printed, if that makes it easier, or you're fine with, tracking everything in the Google Docs. If you're fine, that's great. But if you need a printout, I get it and I can get that to you. So in reviewing all of that, I'm going to, Elliot, was helping me, create a form so that you could track, some bigger items about each of the, and compare them about each of the groups. And so I'm gonna add that to your Google Doc. And then if you're going through that, and if we didn't pick something that you feel is important, if you could just send me an email and then I'll update the document. I think I'd rather just be the one to touch the document and update it, rather than having you guys just go in and add anything. So if you do think that something's important and you want to be able to compare it, just shoot me an email and I'll add it to that document for everybody to review. So as you guys are reviewing all of that, just know at our next meeting on January 7th, that should be a discussion that you're going to be having at that meeting. And then we'll set up the interviews for the January 28th meeting.
Okay. And how many responses?
4.
Okay, good. All right. Any questions for Cheryl?
Thank you.
All right, and you know, don't wait, like if you can't get into the document or you want another row or column put into the document, don't wait, give Cheryl a call. Christmas Day, Christmas.
Whatever.
He's here working on the roof, then.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
And your document
I'll
has
have
to
my
wait.
phone, Jen.
She has that red hat and beard she puts on to go up under it. All right, next is, excuse me, financial, warrants. Do I have a motion?
Don't move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? Any against? At the last, several meetings, we've been talking about the audit. You've got all the documents. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
All right, questions, comments?
The unassigned fund balance, now that we do not have a capital project, what's the plan for that?
So if you remember when we talked about our fund balance management plan, we've got plan A, plan B, and now I guess there's potentially even a plan C, to the extent we want to entertain it. So, plan A, with a successful vote, we allocate the cash and front load it into the project, so we only move it once. Plan B, with an unsuccessful vote, is at the end of the fiscal year, the board can elect to establish, a new capital reserve. How's it in that prospectively? Option C, which we hadn't discussed at that time, but we're looking into whether or not the district can add funds to our repair reserve. I don't have an answer on that yet, but that would be the only other viable alternative.
But those are all acceptable if they happen in 25.
Correct.
Okay.
There's potential limitations on statute and on resolution language from the establishment that we just haven't answered yet. To see if we can add to it, and if so, how much, by how much we can add to it. The difference being that the capital reserve requires voter authorization to access, which is kind of the hinge we talked about earlier. Our repair reserve can be accessed with a board of emergency at the local level.
And to add another reserve, since the vote that we're talking about is May anyway, is this something we should be putting on as a
Well,
an additional?
when we talk to council for the May resolutions, we're gonna talk to them about whether or not it's embedded in the general fund proposition that the voters, by voting yes for the general fund, are hereby authorizing the establishment of, or if it needs to be a standalone proposition. But because ours is fully funded, we would need a second one even to just start putting money away as soon as next year anyway. So, but in one mechanism or another, it behooves us to establish a new one. It's just whether or not we do it this year or next year, depending on successful or unsuccessful vote.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Any against? All right, next is to accept the donation of $4,466. No. There's three of them, right? 5363, one for 5287.28, and one for 4466. 0.02. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's
cool
great.
stuff. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, next is the acceptance of a donation from the PTO to help fund the 7th grade Philadelphia science field trip. $592. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, questions, comments?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, and then we have a motion to accept the resignation for purposes of retirement. We have a motion,
So moved.
so a second.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your service. Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, future agenda items, you know the deal. All right, monthly reports, we have the enrollment report out there. For your information. The SIR report. Any questions on either one of those two? All in favor? Oh, no, never mind. Next is the.
Executive
What's that?
session.
Oh, it is. Okay.
You didn't refresh, so the public comment.
Yeah. All right, next, we have we'll need a motion to go to executive session. Just wanted to, remind everybody that might be listening. This doesn't mean the meeting is over. We go to executive session to have specific discussions around personnel and, school safety. So, but to take action, we have to do that in public. So we'll go to executive session, but we may come back and take action once we return. With that, do I have a motion to go to executive session? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any against?